Well, good morning, everyone. My name is Elisa Sabatini, and I'm the President CEO at VIA International. And for those that are not all that aware of VIA's work, I am going to start off with a bit of a framing for our conversation here. VIA International has worked in the US-Mexico border region for 45 years. And during that time, we've always been oriented to what we call community development. And what we mean by that is finding the folks in our communities that are the best resource for leading change and for leading new innovations. And that can be an elderly person who has a lot of community wisdom, or it can be a young person with a lot of new ideas and a lot of initiative. So we have always worked very directly and closely with community members. And from that, we've emerged with a few of our own development initiatives. In our earliest phases, we had sort of that transitional moment of food giveaways to really understanding that that wasn't making a long-term difference in communities. And so what we did in that moment of time was organize some women in the communities. They were called clubes de mamás, moms clubs. And during that period of time, the women themselves said, well, we don't have a lot of information, and we would like to know more about how to better feed our children economically. And out of that emerged a program that we call sort of in-house Nutricoloquia, nutrition and ecology. Our intention there is to develop family health and food security. From that program, which we kind of consider a hook into the community, we develop groups of women. Some of these women then intend to go forward and continue their education. Most of the women that we've worked with over the years have been maybe at most with primary education or possibly some secondary education, middle school. But if they can go forward and go on to develop their leadership skills and their ability to connect and engage in the community, that's a very important piece. Other members are interested in starting their own little ventures. From that evolved our program of microcredit. Yeah. And many of the folks on the call here are engaged with that program, but we have over the last, since 2004, loaned over $2 million to mostly low-income women who have started, small ventures. I mention this community development work because in the context of this conversation, which is about a trip, we are not a travel company. We are, in fact, a development organization who has leveraged travel as a social enterprise to create investment in community. And from our work, which was always accompanied by a great participation from student groups, we have hosted many universities, and primarily universities and private schools across the years, probably for the last at least 35 years, to learn and to come and invest themselves in the communities. We call this program Global Education, and it does have some volunteering, but on the spectrum of these kinds of trips, the volunteering can be heavier weighted, or we weight many of the trips more on global education. In 2006, we began taking groups to Guatemala, which is where I formerly worked. And I'll say a little more about that in a moment. But Guatemala, of course, was our first location outside of the border region where we engaged in global education. Since that time, we have added sort of other organizations or other locations where we have evolved to take student groups. And many of you are aware of our current program here in the border region via Migrante. And as we have become more engaged, our new executive director who joined us last year has been very involved in border issues, migrant communities, and a lot of things oriented around the border. As we became more involved in that and kind of morphed and merged our efforts in the border region, we became much more aware of the issues of migration. So 2 years ago, prior to this pandemic, we had designed a program thinking, well, we should link these communities that we are connected to. So the communities include Guatemala, include Mexico City, and include the border region. And we believe that tracking the migrant routes, as we're calling this program, would be a very enlightening experience for students, for individuals. And we decided that with the opening up of travel right now, we would give it a go this coming January. The dates of the trip estimated are January 14th through the 28th of 2022. And to say a little more, I wanted to share with you some information here about the trip. Bear with me here as I find my presentation. Let's see. There we go. And I want to thank our communications coordinator for the beautiful presentation, Aida Amador. So our projected itinerary is January 14th through the 28th of 2022. And we will be starting in, we'll leave from Tijuana, but we will start our journey actually in Guatemala. And traveling to Guatemala, a little bit of context there. I worked in Guatemala from the late 80s until the late 90s, 14 years. And one of the sort of signature aspects of learning about why people leave is the Civil War, which went on for 30 plus years in the country and divided many of the communities, but also brought a level of kind of poverty and disintegration in the communities that is, I believe, unparalleled in Central America. Guatemala, however, is a very beautiful, vibrant place and is primarily indigenous in terms of its population. But of course, as in many locations, the indigenous population is among the poorest. Our work in the communities has been mostly oriented around the schools, and the schools are mostly overcrowded. We work only in our programs in the rural highlands, where there is the sort of level of extreme poverty. But this is also the location in Guatemala where people are leaving and where many people are sending their children away from these communities, partly because they have many children. And people could say, well, you know, what happened in the past? Well, what happened in the past was that these large families usually lost half of the children, either early on from respiratory illnesses or from other, you know, community-borne infections and things where they didn't have access to clinical medicine. Well, now with the advent of antibiotics being available in these communities, most of the children survive. And so you have large families with sort of no available land. And, you know, the situation kind of evolves from there. As I mentioned, our work in Guatemala is mostly in the schools. A few of these slides, I think, demonstrate really well the sort of one here in the bottom right corner, that would be maybe a typical family house and a typical number of children. So you can kind of become aware of the dilemma that these families face. But I think seeing it firsthand on a trip is just something beyond personal experience. Our coordinator in the area is Kayla del Valle. She has been our regional director there in Central America for like 8 years and has helped us also coordinate other programming that we had looked at in Nicaragua and in Costa Rica. I do have here a small, shortish video that was sent up by the team. It is presented here in English, but the actual presentation here is in Spanish. So bear with a minute here of Spanish. You can read along.
Hola, soy Pedro Muñoz Álvarez, facilitador comunitario para Vía Internacional acá en Guatemala. Keila Isabel del Valle, directora internacional para Vía, y José Emilio Chan Salazar, guía y acompañante de los grupos de Vía Internacional. Para nosotros, Vía es una organización que colabora de diferente manera en las escuelas más necesitadas de los municipios de San Martín, Jilotepeque y Tecpan, Guatemala, enviando diferentes grupos de estudiantes que contribuyen al mejoramiento de la infraestructura de las escuelas rurales. Asimismo, contribuyen al comercio local, consumiendo comida típica de cada lugar y comprando artesanías elaborados por las personas de las comunidades. El aporte más importante es el desarrollo que creamos con nuestros visitantes dentro de los municipios, como generación de empleo, venta de productos artesanales y visitas a lugares turísticos en las áreas rurales, como el sitio arqueológico de Xiuché, ubicado en el municipio de Tecpan, Guatemala, y Misco Viejo, sitio arqueológico ubicado en el municipio de San Martín, Jilotepeque.
I hope those of you that speak Spanish enjoyed that. At any rate, what is a real important point that he is making, that a journey, any journey to these areas contributes enormously to their economic well-being. And, you might think, well, what can one group do? But actually, the sale of the artisan products there directly from the villages means that they don't have to take them somewhere into town to try to sell them. And it also means that at the prices that we can afford to pay, we may be contributing to a month's income for that family. So it's a very important point that the trip itself is about development. And then we will journey on after some 5 days in Guatemala to Mexico City. And I want to comment here that this lovely picture up on the pyramids jumping is that we will do some fun things and some sort of culturally relevant things in the days that we're in Mexico City. I think the key point here as we journey north is to really delve into, can people meet their basic needs? And I think that in the marginal areas of Mexico City, which are growing by the day, the city itself, they have estimates that it's, I think officially 22 million, but most people think it's more like 25 million people. And people are coming in from all over, and now including many are coming from Central America, and most trying to just stop in Mexico City on their way north. But the sort of need in the city is extraordinary, and I think it demonstrates this other push of people moving north. This is our program director for the program we support in Guatemala City. Her name is Sol Garcia. And one of the things that we have done with groups is develop water systems. And this would be one of the projects that we would contribute to on this journey.
And they started seeing this issue of water as they went into vulnerable communities, low-income communities. They saw this issue of water where low-income people were having to carry, and I mean, this is just in Mexico City. Of course, it happens in rural areas, but we have places in Mexico City even now that get their water by donkey. So Isla Urbana started in 2009. At this point, we've installed over 20,000 systems, rainwater harvesting systems, impacting over 121,000 people.
And I have the great pleasure of serving on the board of Isla Urbana, and they are, our strong partner in Mexico City and host us. And if we can make this journey happen, we will do an escuela de lluvia, which is a school water harvesting system. Oh, having trouble advancing my. The coordinator who supports our work in Mexico City is Molly Porth Cabrera. She came on one of our trips in 2010 here in the border region, and she subsequently got a master's degree in public policy and married a Mexican man, lives in Mexico City. And she's fully bilingual and very savvy of the sort of context of Mexico City. On our last trip, she coordinated a visit to a migrant shelter, which was among one of the most impactful sites that we visited. And we heard the stories, of course, directly from the migrants that were on their way north. And then we'll arrive back home after 5 days in Mexico City. I say home, the Tijuana-San Diego border region. And we will then proceed to spend days in Tijuana, learning about the programs that that I mentioned, that are community development programs, and learning about our partner sister organization, Los Niños de Baja California. As I mentioned, we started a program just in the last year and a half called Via Migrante, which is very much oriented around supporting people that are going to stay in Tijuana. Of the many thousands that are in Tijuana right now seeking asylum or trying to cross, or many will end up staying in Tijuana. And we hope that we're part of the answer to that, to the people that will, end up, their dream may be deferred to cross, but they will end up staying and becoming part of the city here. These photos are from the last sort of season of work, where we worked with migrant kitchens, and pointing out here that the leadership of those kitchens is from the migrants themselves. And so I think that that's the important point, and that's, who we will continue to work with here into the future. You'll get to meet these people and you sort of see the experience that they are having. One of the groups, very important, that we worked with were a group of deported mothers. And that group has gone forward. They are now in a micro loan scenario, and hopefully we'll be getting loans in the next few weeks. But this is a direct conversation from one of the women.
Pensó en nosotras las madres migrantes, que por ejemplo yo estoy sola, mi familia vive en California, y para mí esto es muy grande porque no me siento sola. Están ustedes porque piensan pues en la mujer y en la familia, ¿no? Y que esto vaya creciendo cada vez más y seamos muchas. No nomás nosotras, sino que seamos muchas, que tengamos este tipo de oportunidades, ¿no? Y que siempre vamos a ser recordadas, le decía la señora, que somos la primera generación y me siento orgullosa. Pues gracias por la oportunidad y que Dios les dé más y que esto siga creciendo. Que el día de mañana que seamos miles, alguna vez nos podamos juntar todas, ¿no? Y decir, fuimos parte de, ¿no? Gracias y que Dios les dé más.
Our coordinator and fearless leader for the Via Migrante work is Zaida Amador, and she's often accompanied by Don Marquitos, who is here in the photo with her. So this is just a taste of what you'll experience on the trip. We are still working out some of the details. As probably you all know, travel is a little bit chaotic and uncertain at this moment, but we're sort of stepping out and saying that we're going to take this chance and see if we can put together this trip with interested people. I also just wanted to note briefly some of the technical aspects of the trip. Our intention is to include the flight pattern, which would be leaving from Tijuana Airport and journeying to Guatemala and then returning Mexico City to Tijuana. So we intend to include the flight into the travel. We don't have that pricing yet. I'm working with a travel consolidator on that, but we think that the trip without air will run about $3,000 to $3,400, depending on the movement that's happening in the tourism market right now. So, stay tuned. We will get back to you with more details on that. But I'm hoping that many of you that are listening to this will be interested to join us. And John will be going. I'll be going as well. And we're hopeful that our program director, Rigo Reyes, will also be able to join the journey. So I think it'll be a great thing if we can put together enough folks with interest.